Okay, so that that quick edit, I just got that in there as an image sequence, as PNG sequence. 370 frames long, so yeah, my project settings have actually changed from 100 frames to 370 now, so that becomes my global timeline range. Obviously, if I had several shots in there, it would probably go to the longest duration, but that's fine. So that's my timeline, my resolution set up, my footage is in place. So I'm going to do a recap on the processes we need to do to try and capture this camera data and get it into Maya. What the data we need from the screen is all the static elements which could be camera tracked, which is namely mostly these markers plus a few extra bits that might appear in shots could be useful. So we want to make sure they're all visible. Bits we don't want it to track are Ollie himself, because he's moving, he'll confuse the tracking points. So we need to get rid of him using the green screen. And we need to minimize the strength of his shadows, because they obviously also move, but they're a bit harder to rotate out, especially, you know, as some of them morph into quite big shapes. It might be best just to minimize his shadows. They're quite strong here. You see they're quite high contrast, so those bits might pick up trackers, but probably best not to try and rotate out his shadow as well, but leave it in. And any points that do track to his shadows for any amount of time successfully, we can just, as I was saying to Molly earlier, we can manually delete them before we do the solve. So we don't want to leave in any tracking points that latch onto things that could confuse the software. So we can manually remove ones we don't like the look of, like that. All the other ones should latch onto these other objects and help us to solve this camera movement, and replace our environment with a 3D one which matches best as possible. So we need to get this perspective right when he walks on it, because he's definitely walking on that and he wants to feel like it's at the right angle. And we may well need these walls as accurate as possible so that we can feel like whatever we replace them with will feel like it's at the right angle and in the right place for that scene. Okay, so first thing to do is to chroma key Ollie so we can mask him from the solve. So just get a key light. I'm just right clicking on there, get a key light. Here. Plug in the source. And view the key light and zoom in a bit. Just go up there to the sampler and with the control button held down, just going to click on the greenish mid-green. Just trying it a few times. You can redo it anytime to keep the control down. The more solid black this goes, the better initial start it is in the make. Just press the A key, just have a look at the alpha of that. Oh. Okay, it's not too bad. So this is just going to be a hard key of him. It doesn't need to be refined at the edges. It just literally needs to actually make sure it covers all of him in a solid mask. And we'll have to use garbage masking rotos to remove other elements. Like obviously not everything was chroma keyed, the ceiling, etc. Didn't have any green, so they've come out white as well. Just pulling the screen gain to make the contrast higher. It's not making it much better inside of him, so I'm going to go to the screen matte and just use the clipping of the black and the whites to just make it more extreme. We can be quite extreme with this. It messes up the edges, but we're not concerned about the edges in this case because we're going to enlarge them anyway. We just want it to be a good black and white image. That's got most of it. So we just run up and down the timeline, make sure there's no big problems anywhere else with that key. Looks okay. Our roto might need to get in a bit closer to him when the shadows appear, but we can use that to kick those out. Or maybe we could keep them. Is it worth keeping them? Just wind it up and down. Problem is it brings this shadow back. I could bring his shadows back in. Might be useful, but it's bringing other larger shadows from elsewhere. They're not good. I think I'll leave them out. Okay, so so we now need a garbage mat to remove corners, shadows, bits of markers that have been covered up. So it should just really be a blob around Ollie, but just quite a lot bigger to just remove everything else out from outside of him. So it's key O for a roto. Put it underneath, but you don't want it there. Just look at the footage. Look at the mask. Double click the roto, and we can just start building it from any key. Really, may as well start at the beginning. Okay, so don't make too many points, just enough to morph the shape a little bit as he changes position. So I just jump forward 2 seconds at a time and just keyframe those. Frame 100. Just tweak them. Afraid it's a bit like watching paint dry, but just jumping forwards 50 frames each time, not worried about what happens in between them just yet. We'll go back and check them in a minute. So here's the mask has got closer to him, so we're probably going to need some more frames there to keep that clipping into him. Okay, he's sort of straightened up again a bit here. So wherever the shapes get close to each other, we need to carefully adjust the lines somewhere in between the two. Okay, still going forward another 50. So now he's going the other way. Just adjust for that. The last frame. Now I'm going to go backwards through the timeline and just you probably barely see them. There's little blue keyframes every 50 frames, but I'm just going to go in between all of those now and just check that he hasn't been clipped. He has there. I'm not too worried about a little bit of this stuff getting in. It's too complicated to move all these when there's so few keys to in and out to get rid of, because this is a masking. For the trackers, it doesn't have to be mega accurate everywhere. It's just good to get most of these things out of the way. Where they overlap him, we don't have to worry too much. Even if he doesn't need one, we put a key in it anyway, just because it holds it then. It might need to hold that position for half a second. So having the key there holds it rather than letting it continuously change shape. So again, this one's just holding them there. Just hold. Just literally need to move one point and it will make a keyframe. Okay, so that should remove all the excess. So we're going to plug that into the out mat. of the key light. It's going in now. Just double click the key light. And we need to turn that mask on in the key light. So it should say somewhere crops. There's the crops, there's cropping excess stuff. So we just go to the in mat component and switch it to alpha. Oh, sorry, not the in mat, the out mat. Alpha. Okay, so that's the wrong way around. So it's the inverted alpha. And now that's got rid of all the extra stuff. So we just be tracking Studio, although we'll be tracking a little bit of his shadows too. We'll sort that out afterwards. Next thing to do is make sure that this actually covers him completely. So that mask that we're making from the key light there wants to be enlarged a bit as well. So we're going to we can put an erode node which will actually dilate and make our alpha fatter and cover him properly. So right click on the key light and go to filters, and then a fast erode is fine. And it comes up as it's called a dilate. It doesn't even have the same name when it appears. Which is what we wanted to do. So we're just going to increase that size, and it's just, you can see the alpha and the screen there, it's just getting fatter as we dilate the edges of it, and just make sure that that will patch over him and cover him completely. Okay, so that's our masking layer for our tracker set up. So we use the key light, but this is not the key light that we're going to be using to actually put him in the scene. This is purely been made to mask our tracker. So we could call it the tracker mask or something maybe. So if you want to put a backdrop in, you could go to the other menu, and somewhere in here is a backdrop node. Sorry, I don't remember what I was looking for a second. The backdrop node just makes a big sort of post-it note, which if you double click, you can put a label on. That's what we're calling it, the tracker mask. And this could be any color you like. So let's have it in post-it note yellow. You can then put it behind some of these nodes that you're using to do that. Okay, and that's sort of like a little labeled section of your tree. And now if you need to pick up multiple nodes together because they're all part of the same process, you can pick up the backdrop node. It carries them all with it, and it keeps them neatly labeled so that you know what they were when you come back to it in 6 months. If you want to take them out, you just select the actual nodes and then you can just remove them from it. You click on this one, it takes them with it, so it's like a neat little grouping device as well. Okay. Remember to always keep your tree flowing, arrows all flowing downwards, joining up, moving to the right if need be, but don't have arrows going up into nodes. It just looks at a distance like something is coming out of the key light and going into the roto, not the other way around, which is why we always try and keep the arrows pointing downwards so that we know what's upstream and what's downstream. So the next task is to try and track this scene then. So just press A, turn off the alpha. Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? It's dilated the picture as well. We're only interested in the alpha channel from this thing, so that's fine. Just to view back our footage at the beginning. So we need a 3D tracker. So right click on the nodes and go to 3D. In there is the dreaded camera tracker. There it goes. It's just going to put it up here, but that's fine. So it's possible we could minimize this shadow with some grading. It's basically anything that goes into this camera tracker is going to be tracked. If there's any way we could reduce the amount of movement in that shadow, it's worth trying, although actually I'm thinking it's quite dark there, so it's unlikely I can get rid of that. But I'm going to try a color correct anyway and just mess about with the levels and see if I could just make the tracking points stay on but the shadow go away. Pressing C, I get a color correct. I can plug that, I can just drag it to my line goes white and it drops it into the upstream of the camera tracker. Okay, and I'll just I can affect the shadows, the midtones, the highlights in the color correct. So I'm just going to see what maybe reducing the contrast does in the midtones. You see it's immediately graying out all the midtone parts of the picture, but leaving the dark and the highlights alone. But I don't know. Unfortunately, most of the picture seems to fall into the mid-tone contrast of the. Well, maybe my trackers are in the highlight area, so maybe I can make them stronger and keep that setting. It's worth a try. So here are the highlights now. Just bumping them up. Not really concerned what happens to him because he's been masked out anyway by the other thing we just made. I'm looking at these other areas and it's bringing them out quite nicely. It's certainly killed the shadows in this part of the film. Still got some things to track here and up here. So that might be worth trying a scan of. So what I do need to do is to mask Ollie now from the tracker. The tracker, if you zoom in on it, you can see it has a mask input. Most nodes can be masked, which is what makes the whole thing so powerful. The mask can go in there and isolate different areas from any process at all, pretty much. So the camera tracker also can be masked and told to look at one bit but not the rest of the picture. So I'm just going to drag it downstream of our tracker mask nodes that we have. So to keep readjusting stuff, because obviously, yeah, you can't have them next to each other. You really want to see that one going into this one, showing that this comes after this process has been worked out. So that mask can just be picked up and slung straight in there. Because it's a mask channel, it's going to ignore this. Obviously, this dilate, when we look at it, it has an RGB and an alpha channel, but the mask, these mask inputs only take the mask channel. Okay, so I'm just clicking on the camera tracker now. It comes up, and you have to tell it to use that mask. It's plugged in, but it's not using it until you take this none button off and actually start using it. This time I'm not 100% sure which way round it needs to be until I actually start doing something, but as soon as I start tracking, I'll know if it's the wrong way round. Just viewing that tracker. If my mask's the wrong way around, it's going to, all the tracking points are going to be on Ollie instead of on the everything around him. So you know it's the wrong way around. You can stop it immediately if you got it the wrong way around, and just start again. Just switch the global scale back to normal. Okay, so the camera tracker has got the mask input in anyway. Not 100% sure it's the right way around, but we will find out. So we've got other settings in the camera tracker that need to be thought about. We switched on our mask so that we know that's happening. The range is set to input at the moment, which is actually the length of our shot, so that's okay. We can leave that. Free camera is fine. That's what we're looking to make. The type of camera movement. Lens distortion, we don't know what the lens details are, but we can assume there is some distortion. So we're going to switch it to unknown lens and let the software figure it out. We'll put undistort input on. Focal length is unknown. Film back's unknown. Okay, so that's ready to track, which we will do once we're sure we're ready. We'll hit that function. So these are the stages that we have to go through with the camera tracker. So tracking will be the first one, and then once it's been through the track, we solve the points that we solve the camera. So first of all, it tracks points, and then it uses those points to figure out where the camera is supposed to be. In the property nodes up here, we've got a settings button. Okay, and there's a number of features we're tracking. I think 150 would probably be enough because we're not distributing over a huge landscape or something with points everywhere. We really want just 10 points to congregate around each of these markers and hold on to them. Really, that would be enough. I think 150 is probably enough points in the default, so that obviously the more there are, the slower it gets. It might be more accurate. If you don't get an accurate reading first time, might be worth doubling that amount. That's okay to do. So this thing, the feature separation, this is the thing that I missed the first time I did this. I left things on default settings and didn't get a great result because by default, the tracking software assumes that you might be showing some live action footage that has tracking points everywhere in it, like like a landscape or something, or a street scene, and it forces the trackers to spread out as much as possible and take points from everywhere, because if it can do that, it gets a better camera solve. But in this scene, we don't want it to do that because we don't want it to force distribute them all over the green screen, because there is no detail on it to pick up on. So most of those points will get wasted. So this feature separation should be increased so that it doesn't distribute the points, but they're allowed to cluster. If you read the if you hover over it, it says set a required feature separation to force feature tracks to cover the image. reduce the separation when increasing the number of features to track. Okay, so we don't want to reduce it because we're not increasing the number of features, we're actually decreasing the number of features to track. We wanted to say, yes, track what there is and ignore the open spaces because they're too difficult to track. So we've actually increased it. Maybe that's too much, maybe just like 40 or something will do. Okay, and we'll leave these other ones on default for now. Let's see how that goes through. This smoothness could possibly smooth the camera. So the thing that we did earlier, where I showed you how to just delete the odd frame in Maya, this may well have a similar kind of effect where it's averaging out numbers as it goes along. So it may, take 5 frames and say, oh, one of those 5 frames is wildly wrong. We're going to average you out. I'm going to leave that alone for now because it seemed easy enough to fix in Maya, just those odd couple of frames. If there's lots and lots of dodgy frames, then it might be worth experimenting with that one as well. Okay, so there are lots of variables possible to get different outcomes, and yeah, experimenting with the best combinations is required really to get the best results. But I'm gonna try that, and so immediately we're gonna double check to make sure that it's tracking outside of Ollie and not inside of him. And as soon as we start, we'll see tracking points start to appear. Okay, yeah, so that's great. The trackers have appeared on outside of him, so we're not tracking him, we're tracking the walls. And it's going to take 10 minutes, not something ridiculously long.
Ollie, if that's going to take 10 minutes, would now be a good time to call a break and then reconvene when that's done?
Yeah, good timing. Nick, are you there still, Nick? Hi. Nick, I had a quick look at the others' edits and stuff earlier. Have you got something? Did you put one together yet? Have you got a mic? No. Have you got an edit you could share with me? Oh, sorry. Did you have you selected one yet that you wanted to do, or? Is it scenario 4 you were going to choose? Because there's like, it looks like there's 6 versions of that scenario 4. And then there's like all of these ones that say 3 and 4 close-ups are possible close-ups for that. So it's like, it was like that one. It might not have been that particular one, but it was. Oh, it's 3C. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, it was that one, was it? Well, that's cool. I mean, there's like, it's quite a long shot, but then you can break it up with one or two of the close-ups. So I think all of these close-ups could be used in one of those shots. So that's just a close-up of him looking around, trying to find a way out or something. I think they might all be like that, actually. I can't think what the others do. He's very frustrated there. Yeah, so you just need to basically get that long shot and break it up with one of those short ones, I suppose. Have you got did you have some idea of what kind of place you might put him in? I mean, it was sort of designed to with him looking out. It was sort of like a rooftop in mind, but it doesn't have to be. It could be like a bridge, or it could be that he just looks down a big hole or something, or down a trapdoor, a staircase, or over a balcony. Could be an interior, where where he's looking over like a prison block, where he's looking over a fence or something. I don't know. Did you have some ideas as to an environment that might work with that? An alleyway, yeah. What about when he looks down, though? I mean, how's that gonna work with an alleyway? You're gonna just have a sewer, Well, maybe you don't need to use that bit. I mean, they're quite a long shot, so you might be able to just like have the bit where he runs in and then cut to the close up and then use a different bit of a shot. Yeah, yeah, could be a sewer grate, couldn't it? Or like roadworks or something. Yeah, you'll need to find some kind of reference materials and stuff to think about, you know, a look and feel for that environment, that alleyway. Decide if it's going to be a sort of daytime shot or something, or a nighttime shot with street lights and stuff or something. Any plan, and just sort of how grungy your alleyway is going to be? What's going to be in it? Is it going to be full of dustbins? Is it going to be between office blocks or something, or what the flooring is? You know, is it paved or just the dirt alley? Try and find some reference. I don't think you see it from you only see it from one direction mostly, don't you? I think but you do have to have a kind of I think there's a bit of a flaw you see in that scene. Is it 3C? 3C. Let's have another look. So you don't have to have all of that. Might be good to establish the shot. It's like 10 seconds up to there, so you could actually cut it at the point where he starts running and then go to a close-up and then skip this whole section if you didn't want to look down the hole and go straight from your close-up to the sort of reaction shot at the end, and you'd still be running in at like about 20 seconds or so for your sequence. So I think when you get the shots in, just get more than you need. You know, maybe take a couple of different bits from the different shot for scenario freeze and take several close-ups and just try editing them in different ways to sort of see a few different combinations, because you can chop whole sections out and still make a sensible edit from some of those bits. Yeah, the close-up shots, if it's just in the list there should be there should be some files labeled scenario 3 and 4 close-ups, so they could be used for scenario 3 or 4. They're just all close-ups of Ollie doing a double take or whatever with the gun, which could be used in either of those scenarios. So this is close-ups D. Oh, so there's close-ups of him shooting, and there's also close-ups of him sort of just looking. Just take it from here, maybe, where he just looks around and he's got holding the gun and he's searching for a way out. So either of those could be used with that scenario 3C, or maybe both of them. You know, but you probably can't use both close-ups back to back. You'd have to, like, you know, cut back to the wide shot of him, being approached by the police, and then you could do the second close up of him firing the gun, maybe, and just make the sequence out of 4 shots. Maybe the long edit chopped up, broken up 2 times by 2 close-ups, for instance. Yeah. Do you think you can get that cut and made up before next time? Because I really need everyone to have their edits to work with. We're actually behind our production deadline if anyone hasn't got their edits already done. Okay, so I'm trying to put these production deadlines in so that we don't end up where some of us were last time, not having got any things approved early enough to finish without a big rush at the end. So it shouldn't take more than half an hour to just go through all those clips that have scenario 3 or 4 in them, and just take some bits and put together a little edit that makes, or a couple of little edits, because you want a bit of wriggle room if a shot is just proving really hard to edit or to figure out in Nuke. Have an alternate shot for each of the sections in your thing, so that you can drop one quite easily and replace it with something else. The more the more time you spend getting some options, give you more flexibility when it comes to the compositing side of things. Okay, because you're not being told this is the edit you have to use. You've been given a fair amount of option and shots and parts that you can make it up from. So you should take advantage of that, because a lot of the time you'll be just given an edit from the director who's been in the edit suite, and these are the shots that he wants, and you have to fix them and make them work. But as you're the editor as well in this scenario, you can go back to your edit and replace or change shots. If you're finding one is just solving more successfully than others, because you're just going to get a better result having a bit of extra choice. I'm going to go back then to see if our tracking has got to an end. It did. Okay, so I don't know about the rest of you if you've come back on. Just where's my team's gone? Let's just check. All right, James and Molly, hopefully you're back for your break. So as we can see, our trackers followed these points, and there's lots of orange tracking markers following them everywhere, but not on Ollie anywhere, which is good. We don't want on him. So what you really want is, throughout your sequence, some sort of consistency on both sides or as much of the screen as possible. If at some point you end up with just a few tracking markers in one corner and nowhere else, then that's not good news. It could easily throw the camera tracker out and get a bad result. But if you've got some points that are distributed fairly evenly all the way through your sequence most of the time, we're in a good chance, I think. So it's looking positive so far. I'm going to hit the solve button right now. Oh, do I want to? No, I'm gonna hit the track button now and just see how it does with this, just on its default settings. Sorry, the solve button. So we're going to do solve camera. I had a quick look at those tracks; they're looking quite good. So again, this takes a minute or two, but not as long as the main track. Okay, it's sort of so now these they've changed shape to these little circles. The successful ones have anyway. They've got the tracking points are sort of green now, the good ones, and they've got little circles around them, which means that they've helped to solve the camera. So we've also got orange and red ones, which, as you might remember from before, they're unsolved and rejected marker points. So we can afford to have a few of those. It's just if our whole screen goes orange and red, we're in trouble. We have to change settings, and you can change the settings. So you could say, I want this to be more tolerant and of the solve, and just sort of say we can reduce the amount of error and let it accept some that would otherwise be rejected. We could be more strict with it even. So we got sort of the auto tracks thing here. The max track error was on a default amount, but we can alter those if we get if we lower it, we reject more of them because we're saying don't make hardly any errors. Okay, I don't want to reject too many because I want it to make this attempt this solve. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. So we got a few red ones, rejects, unsolved. So just go to the bottom of that auto tracks tab, and we just delete the unsolved. Yes, we're sure. That's gone. The orange one's gone. Delete the rejected. Yes, we're sure. Just taking the red ones away. Just leaves us with our good green ones now. So this is the point where we should check if it's latched onto his shadows at some point here. We don't really want those ones if they have. It looks like maybe couple here have sort of attached to the, what are they tracking points? If you're not sure, you can just sort of view the next node up. Oh, sorry, no. You do have to hide the camera tracker to see them. Oh, so there were some points there, so it may be. So that one was okay. That was actually a tracker there. Okay, so it hasn't actually picked up edges of that shadow at all. So that's good news. So because we didn't mask that off. So it's mostly tracker points. So that's quite good. Looking hopeful. There are very few actual floor marker points. So I'm not sure. Well, there are some. So we'll make an attempt at marking those as ground plane, because it might help put it the right way around. So just go to, so I'm just selecting the ones on the floor, right click, ground plane, set to selected. They just go pink instead. And just go down the timeline, find any others that might appear. Not many. Okay, that's it really. I've selected those. I'm just going to update the solve, make sure it's got them. Okay, so that's sort of ready to export a scene out then. So we're going to see what this might look like now as an environment in a 3D space, and see how well it made a camera for us. So we go to the export function in the camera tracker and just go down to Scene Plus, click that on, and then hit Create. It puts together some 3D nodes together, but importantly, it has our scene here that we can then go inside and have a look. So we double click on that and press 1 there, and we're getting a strange black square. What's this? Oh, okay. So we're getting a result, some a camera, some tracker points. They're all at a strange angle, but I'm seeing the patterns in there again. So I think we got our long wall and our short wall quite fairly clearly placed there. Obviously from above it's not mega clear, but I think, yeah, a long wall there and our short wall going across that way. And, you know, more importantly, a sort of a distance from the camera, a sort of focal point on the origin there, which we can relate to in Maya. We'll probably just have to tilt the scene so that because it had so few floor planes, it didn't really know where the floor was sitting in that scene. But yeah, we can fix that. We can our camera looks to be at the right angle to the, you know, it's upright in the scene, in the same direction as the rest of the stuff. So what we want to do is maybe just let the scene play through and just see if that camera moves around in a convincing way, because the first thing that might be wrong is the camera might get to a frame and then suddenly jump to a different location if it hasn't solved correctly. So what we're looking for is just a sort of the movement of the camera that's in a sort of natural way, similar way to how I moved around in the studio. Yeah. So just let it play. It's playing quite slowly. Hopefully it will cache the movement and play that through real time or something. But yeah, so far the camera is just slowly following the action as he walks up the room, and I think it follows him back again, if I'm right, or it turns around as he turns to shoot at us. So far it hasn't jumped anywhere anyway, which is good. Interesting, actually. It disappeared on the replay. Yeah, it's actually quicker to just scrub up and down, actually, because it actually plays a bit faster than real time. But you can see it's following him, then it turns. So it doesn't look too bad. I think that's worth moving over to Maya and trying to figure that out into the scene. If we remember back to the first lesson, I actually also put out the footage in a couple of different formats that we could use in Maya, because we need this footage in Maya 2 to see if our 3D scene is making much sense. So the things we needed were, I mean, we could actually take this footage, although it's quite large sequence, to bring into Maya as a green screen, but more useful is having Ollie in the 3D scene with a mask, so that we can actually cut him out and see him in Maya as a cutout in the location. So it doesn't have to be the best quality key at this stage, just enough to cut him out in a basic way and bring him into Maya. The footage, any sequence that we bring into Maya, it would be helpful if it was like a smaller resolution as well, because we don't want to slow down Maya too much. So we don't need it to be full HD when it's in Maya, because it's just for our visual reference, really. So what I do is we're going to half the scale of this shot. We're going to bring one version in with the green screen studio and one version with a mask for Ollie, so we can cut him out and see him as a cutout as well. So the first one, the version that's just going to look like this but be smaller, is just so we can compare the perspective of the floor and the studio to our 3D model. So we need the studio to be in there so we can try and get the best match we can to the real world environment. And then the other piece of footage, which has Ollie and a mask and a transparency, is the one that we're going to use to actually, see him in our new location once we've removed the studio. So that each of your shots that you have, you need to make a sort of a Maya-friendly version, two Maya-friendly versions for each shot that you have in your sequence. Okay. So the first one is just literally a scaled down version of this footage. So that's quite simple. We just use a Reformat Node to change the scale. Reformats come under Transform menu. Reformat there. Okay. You just plug that into the footage. So the Reformat Node, so half of HD footage, so if you just halve that figure, that's 540. Okay, so that'll be we're just going to make from this HD resolution, we're going to do one that's half the resolutions, which means it's actually a quarter of the size, because it's going to be half up to there, and then it's going to be half the width. So it's just like 1/4 of the picture area as it is now. So that'd be 4 times smaller than this, therefore quicker to load into Maya. And if we make it a JPEG as well, it'd be even smaller. compressed as well, which is fine. It's just for reference. Okay, so press W for a write node on that. And the reformat itself, we're going to just change the output format half. So we're just halving these two numbers to get a picture which is 1/4 the size. Okay. So we may need to make a new. You can give it a name. I just call it half HD. Okay. Half of 1920 is 960, and half of 1080 is 540. But actually, here's a good tip. I'm just going to undo that. Oh no, I'm not. I'm just going to undo that by. I think also, if you don't actually know what numbers are and you want to quickly do them, you can actually do the math in the boxes. If you want to make that half, I think you can put a \2, and it automatically calculates it for you. So it's like a little trick, little programming thing. So yeah, any number, if you want to half a number, just \2, or quarter it, \4. All right. If you want to multiply it, I think it's *2. Yeah, that's back up to 540. Okay. So yeah, divide is \, multiply is *, and I think you can, you can add. Would just add and subtract keys as well. So that's quite useful. I mean, you will eventually just learn these resolutions because you'll be using them all the time. Although these days there's so many resolutions for different things, like social media and YouTube and other things, and it might be constantly different things all the time. It might be harder to remember them, but usually, quite often, the combinations of these figures will come up again and again. 1024 is another one that you see a lot. Probably there in the root format. But that's half HD, okay? So that's to reformat it to 1/4 the total surface area of the picture. And then in our write node, we can tell it to make a JPEG. So we're going to give it a location now for an image sequence. So because these are going to Maya, I usually put them in the 3D Maya scene. Okay, so I've got one called 3D, and then within Maya, you probably recognize some of the subfolders that usually exist in the Maya project, and scenes is where the actual scripts are kept, and source images is where any images that you're using in your 3D is kept. So that's a good place for your image sequences in there. And I've made subfolders already inside the source image folder for these half-res frames. Just put them in there. And I'm going to give it a new name. So I've already got one sequence of nice, so I can just call this half-res gun dot, and then I need it to have up to 3 digits long. So it's hash dot, and then I want it to be JPEGs, nice and compressed, so JPEG. Okay, so that's going to now make an image sequence in my 3D source images folder of half resolution green, and I'll just make sure I look at that before I render it, make sure that the reformat hasn't cropped it or done something weird. It has actually scaled it correctly, but if it's always possible that it might do something else. It might crop it, something. But generally, it's defaulted to this width thing. So if you change the resolution in width, it will distort it or scale it down to that new resolution in width. And you can see in the bottom of my picture that the picture I'm looking at is half HD, and it's got its actual resolution at the top there. If I go and view the original footage, it's full resolution 1920 1080 there, but there's no difference otherwise. You have to be careful when you're moving around these trees that if you're looking at the right one and you're working in the right resolution. Always take a glance in the corners, make sure. Okay, so that can be written out. It's going to be the length of the sequence. So there's a render button here. It's correct input, so just go yes, and it quickly splits those off to that subfolder. Don't know why I called it half-res gunny, isn't it? Got a gun in this thing. It's got a lantern, hasn't it? Never mind. So we're often sending things backwards and forwards between Maya and 2D for these visual effects. So it's constantly using, one tool to prepare footage for 3D, and then the 3D can come back in rough formats as well. Rough outputs, rough renders from 3D come back here to check against the footage back in Nuke. So you've got to get used to sort of working between the two of them and how they coexist, and how you can make useful things from one for the other and back again to give you the sort of feedback that you need. So that's our little studio set with him in it, spat out for Maya. What I'm going to do is going to move the reformat over, and I'm now going to make another write node. I'm going to copy that one. Control V. So I'm going to make a copy of that one, but this time I'm going to make a PNG sequence. Okay, so I'm just changing JPEG for PNG. I'm just going to rename it correctly, lantern. Okay. So this is a PNG sequence. I've changed it to PNG because I want this next one to have an alpha channel as well. So you saw that if you look at the color arrows, color stripes on these nodes, they're just RGB images because the footage itself was RGB and it wasn't told to add an alpha channel at any point. So these JPEGs can't hold alpha channels anyway, they're just image files. So this is a pure HDB. So this next branch, I'm going to put one out that has got an alpha for Ollie. In this case, I'm actually going to switch them around the other way. Okay, but at the moment it doesn't actually have one, so we've got to add an alpha for him. So I'm going to do another key light. So the key light. So just plugging that in there above the write node PNG. So our half resolution footage goes into the source. And I'm going to key it best I can. It doesn't have to be a perfect key, but it sorry, what's going on there? 3D view. No. Okay. double click my key light, pick my color picker, and control, choose a spot. In a certain amount of screen gain and a little bit of clipping. So this is only so we can sort of get a good idea of Ollie in the 3D environment. So a little bit of these shadows won't really distract too much from that. It's not our final comp. Although by all means you could go ahead and set up your final comp. The actual footage is there. Make a much more refined key light. And if you did get it working perfectly well, you could use that really good key that that you make in Maya, and have that just one thing in your tree ticked off already. Your chroma key could be all set up with rotos and everything to remove all shadows, multiple keys, in keys, out keys, or you could just do what I'm doing now and make a quick and dirty one that has a few bits of shadow coming through, but you're not going to worry about them too much. And again, you've already made a roto for this outer area, but remember it's in a different resolution now, so you can copy that reformat, and you can also plug it into that roto so that it reduces the size of the roto to fit this new key light. Okay, so that goes in the out mat. And in the key light, you just need to turn that crop out mat component crop. Just needs to be switched on to whichever, yes, the inverted alpha. Okay, so we've now got a key for Ollie. It's not perfect. There's some bits of transparency in his shirt. There's some bits of shadow at the end, but I mean it's more than good enough to cut him out for a rough view in Maya. Okay. And I'm pretty sure that pre-multiplies the footage for you, so you don't need to do a pre-multiply node or anything. And you can see from the key light's added the alpha channel that we wanted. So this is the PNG sequence we're writing out now. Okay. So go to the right node and hit the render, and another 370 frames, half resolution, but with an alpha channel. And we're not going to get much time to get it into 3D today, so maybe that will be next time. Yeah, please finalize your edits this week, and it will get a few versions of them and saved off and image sequences out, and try and get a chance to have a go at this. I will put last week's demo up, although it's very similar to this one. Really done the same thing again with a different piece of footage this time. Last week's one did go into 3D, and because I had just over half an hour left at the end of the lesson to go into 3D, so you saw, and I showed you that briefly, so you might want to look at that bit of it at least. and see if you can just practice on one of your shots really, and see if you can get this tracking thing making some sense. You really just have to have a go at it to do it, and the sooner you're using it and analyzing your shots and getting that data, you'll feel so much safer once you've got the data and it's in Maya and it makes some sense. And then you really, after that, it's all very much like polishing and aesthetics and getting lighting right and making models and doing texturing and all that stuff that I can help you with as well. But it'll be more like your personal project things then, just to make it your own. But yeah, any problems with this, I'd rather be tackling them sooner rather than later, because it's a bit more, making the 3D environment is probably going to be, for most of you, a bigger build in 3D than what you did last time. So you do need to allow plenty of time for it as well, but not leaving the comping side of stuff. Till later on in the process, when you spent so much time on your 3D model, you've forgotten that it has to actually make sense with the footage. Okay, when you try and get a dummy model to make sense with the footage first, and then you can put it aside, knowing that it's like, when you got your final render, it's going to work. And yeah, until you catch up and get the edits sorted and into Nuke, start doing some of these trackings, you're not going to it's not going to be safe to start doing any heavy duty 3D stuff at all yet. Really, I just want to make sure everyone has got to that stage and tuck that safely behind them before the sort of the heavy modeling and texturing business begins. And you should all have some good idea by next week of what your environment is going to be as well, please. So you've had your shots for a couple of weeks that we allocated already, so you should have thought of some environments and had a chance to dig up some reference and and make a little plan, a little floor plan or a little some sketches or a collection of notes of what your environment is going to comprise of and what reference you're going to use for it, roughly what colors it's going to be, roughly how dark and light it's going to be, what any moving parts in it. I want you all to have all of that planned out if possible. But yeah, but total priority, get your sequences edited to a set of shots that you're going to attempt first, and have a few backup shots in case one or two in particular might just be too difficult. You might want to maybe have a short edit and a long edit too, something like that, because I know that there's a minimum duration. It's quite short really, and I think most of these could probably be over 20 seconds long on average, whereas I think you've only been obliged to actually do 10 or 15, so you might want a shortened version edit too. But I'm hoping that mostly they'll be about that 20-odd second duration, because that's how they look best, I think, probably. Any questions, anyone? Let's see. To and see how that data imports. Probably only just have time to have a quick look at it in here, but why not? Oh, I know why not, because I haven't exported it yet, have I? Okay. So just another backdrop node. This time I'll call this the exports for Maya. I can call this. Actually going to make that bigger. The backdrops have a little corner tab, you can scale them just interactively. So okay, just put one of these dots here. So these are just full stops, and you can use them to just tidy up your branches. Because I'm using this footage in 3 different places now, so I've just put a full stop at each one so that I can just tidy up the lines. Rotate can go under there. It's sort of being used across 2 sections. It's very useful. And so to get our camera out, if you remember, we have a 3D node. We have to go to 3D geometry and then a write geo, which then lets us write out some a Maya friendly camera. So again, I'll save it to the 3D scenes. Put it in my 3D scenes. Oops. Backslash, and then I'll just call it Bantam Cam. Now I'll call it .fbx, and fbx functions recognizes that, can do that. So press execute, and that's just asking for how many frames, all of them. Just exporting the camera, and it's just running through the. It runs through the timeline, exporting the camera frame by frame. Yeah, so from Nuke, we've now exported 2 useful pieces of footage for Maya and a camera for Maya. Okay, so they're the 3 things that you need in this first stage of compositing, this sort of tracking stage. And then once you've got those 3, you can do your first tests on the 3D scene in Maya, which we just about got time to open. Just. Seems like I'll find it. It's gone somewhere else. Right, if you can't find where you sent it, go back to your right node and have a look, see where it went. The address should be there. 3D scenes. Oh, I made the scenes. I think I made 2 scenes folders somehow. Oh, it's a bit silly. I've written it twice, so maybe it was there. I just didn't look hard enough. I think that mistake in my right node meant it didn't save it. Let's try one more time. So these are strings of addresses. You do have to be careful. It's best to label things, put them in sensible locations. Don't give things the same name as something else that's very similar. It's a lot of management of files and moving sequences around. They can build up to huge quantities after a very short time. So import, let's choose import fast chance. Okay, I've got it this time. Yeah, well, it's in there, and it looks pretty similar to how it did in Nuke. So we can next week we'll just twist that around, get this level to the floor. We can see very obviously where the floor is supposed to be at the bottom of those 3 lines of markers. So twist it around and put this square to the origin, and the you know, have the back wall flat to the x-axis and this wall along the z-axis, have the vertical properly lined up to the y-axis, and then you know, we'll drop in a quick dummy model, a couple of cubes or something, whatever it needs, a couple of grids, and then we'll be ready to just test that footage out in here, and you know, get a basic 3D scene that we can then use to start building our environment, and also to send back feedback back to Nuke as well, just sort of test renders back to Nuke of 3D objects that are replacing our green screen. Okay, so that's what we need to do, and we need to do that for every one of our shots. But yeah, we just got 3 or 4 shots in most sequences, so we'll soon have a set of cameras that are matching cameras for to build our environment around.
Daddy,
No. All right, thanks everyone. I'll talk to you next Monday.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye for now.
Cheers, Alec.
Cheers.